Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're cutting right through the glossy college marketing brochures and getting straight into the actual hard math of educational value. We are zeroing in on a very specific sustainability accounting standard. It's called SASB SVED 260A3. Now, I know that sounds super technical, but it actually answers the single biggest question on everyone's mind. Does this program actually get you a job? So let's dive right into this step-by-step tutorial on calculating the true job placement rate. So, how do we truly measure if an education was worth the investment? Well, we have to look at the real-world stakes here, right? With skyrocketing tuition, more and more students are basically forced to finance their education with massive loans. And if a student graduates with high debt and zero employer-valued skills, well, they default. That creates massive economic and social fallout. So we absolutely need a foolproof metric to track real success and cut through all the fluff, just to see if an institution is actually preparing its students for the workforce. Here is how we're going to break this all down today. First, why job placement matters. Second, defining the completer cohort. Third, the 180-day employment test. Fourth, the 13-week retention rule. And finally, decoding the 271-day window. All right, Section 1, why job placement matters. The stakes for these educational entities are completely absolute. Many programs, especially those at for-profit colleges, are built specifically to prep students for the real-world workforce. When an institution delivers high-quality education, graduates get hired, and they successfully pay off those loans. But if they fail, it's a massive reputational and financial risk that directly impacts an institution's very ability to survive and attract new students. Moving right along to Section 2. Defining the completer cohort. Who actually gets counted? Think of this as the top of a giant funnel. A completer isn't just someone who enrolled or, dropped out halfway through. You have to actually cross the finish line. You strictly need that officially conferred degree, diploma, or certificate to even enter the cohort that we are measuring today. So the math itself looks pretty straightforward at first glance, right? It's just successfully placed completers divided by the total cohort. Simple. Well, actually, scratch that. It's not that simple at all. Being categorized as placed is incredibly strict. You don't just get to count someone because they found some random job. The standard applies a very rigorous set of criteria that every single graduate must meet. Which brings us to Section 3, the 18-day employment test. The clock starts ticking. 180 days. A student has exactly 180 days, so roughly 6 months, after receiving their credential to obtain employment. If a graduate takes, say, a whole year to find a job, they might be a fantastic success story in the long run. But under this specific standard, no way. They do not count toward the job placement rate for that reporting period. The clock starts ticking the exact second that award is conferred. And this is crucial. Finding just any job before the buzzer sounds doesn't cut it. Say you get a nursing degree, but you're working as a barista while applying to hospitals. You don't count. The standard strictly demands gainful employment in a recognized related occupation. Basically, the job has to prove your specific education actually paid off and led directly to your intended career path. Let's look at Section 4, the 13-week retention rule. 13 is our next magic number here. To prevent institutions from artificially inflating their placement numbers, setting graduates up with temporary fluff jobs, short-term contracts, or fleeting gigs just to check a box, the standard enforces a strict 13-week retention rule. The graduate literally must hold down that job for at least 13 weeks after receiving their credential. This proves they are actually integrating into the industry and holding a truly sustainable role. If they land a job on day 100 but lose it 3 weeks later, they completely failed the retention test and vanished from the success metrics. So how does this all fit together? Section 5, decoding the 271-day window. How do you actually report on a metric that takes months to verify? Well, you do the math. Day 0 is graduation. The student has up to 180 days to find that right job. Then, they must maintain it for 13 weeks, which is 91 days. 180 plus 91 equals exactly 271 days. That forms our rigid, non-negotiable measurement window. Therefore, 271 is the ultimate number for accountants and compliance officers. For a graduate to be counted in a specific fiscal year's job placement rate, they must be conferred their award at least 271 days before the end of the entity's fiscal year. This allows the necessary time frame for both the search and the retention period to fully play out. Once the books close, the timeline is absolutely final. Let's translate that accounting speak
to human speak, all right? The standard explicitly outlines what this means for a standard calendar year. If an institution's fiscal year ends on December 31st, anyone graduating after April 4th simply doesn't have 271 days left in the year to pass all those required filters. So, if a student graduates on April 5th or during the traditional summer window, they are legally deferred and counted in the job placement rate for the next fiscal year. It's just a brilliantly precise way to ensure total uniformity across the board.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to think about how demanding this standard truly is. It leaves literally zero room for vague success stories or marketing fluff. The next time you see a university boasting about a 95% placement rate, ask yourself, are they actually using this level of rigorous step-by-step reporting, or are they just counting the baristas? Thanks for hanging out with us today, and keep asking those tough questions about the data you consume.